This is the weekly astrology report. I am Jody Shirami at AstroPod_cast. How has your week been? The full moon, Taurus super full moon was yesterday, and it was a whopper. It definitely highlighted a bunch of things that we kind of knew were happening, and now it's been released out into the world. And there's also been a lot of unstable weather, especially over in Asia. God bless us. I hope you guys are doing okay, and may you get all the aid you need and support you need. So basically this week is recovering from the full moon yesterday. And Mars would be making a lot of aspects with the outer planets as it begins to shift out of Sagittarius. And the moon will be moving from Cancer through Libra until next Friday on the 12th. And basically today, after the full moon yesterday, the Gemini moon has now shifted. It's at 22 degrees, whereas when it was at the full moon on Thursday, just last night, it was around 13 to 15. But, you know, the moon moves quickly around. It is the fastest moving body that moves around our Earth. So now Mars in Sagittarius is at 22 degrees, and it is now opposing that Gemini moon. And it happened this morning. So if you felt a little uncomfortable this morning, this might have been the reason your emotions were activated with Mars. In Sagittarius, this is the number 9. It is the 9th house of the zodiac wheel. So whatever your 9th house is has this Sagittarius energy into it. And now Mars is here. And as you know, Mars had a lot of rebirths during its retrograde period this past summer, where it went from Leo back into Cancer and then back again into Leo all the way into the fall, I believe. So Mars is going through a ending of its 2-year synodic cycle, is what they call it, the astrologers, meaning it takes Mars 2 years to come back here to Sagittarius. And so when it gets back to Aries, it will be beginning a new synodic cycle with the moon. And I believe that is in March, is what Evan Nathaniel Grimm was saying in his December forecast. So the thing with the new moon is that Gemini is a information hub of constantly being bombarded with new information, and that's been happening a lot with the sun's coronal mass ejection that's coming towards Earth this week. Is the size and as powerful, or maybe more now, because our Earth is much more electrified, as the Carrington situation back in 1859. So it was in 1859, the Carrington occurrence, where the magnetic impulses from the sun were ejected. And it was so powerful. I think I've spoken about this before, because a lot of astrologers have been speaking about this possibly happening as the sun is regenerating itself, and it does that every thousands of years. So I believe that the astrologers are predicting that this will really recharge our already super grand water grand trine. In terms of, water is a conduit for electricity, and this is electromagnetic electricity, so it can be also zapping you in literal and figuratively ways in terms of the typhoons that have hit Asia have been devastating, especially to Sri Lanka, and they're just finding more and more people that are missing or found dead. It was such a huge, huge, devastating storms that just kept coming over there. And so now there's a lot of snow up north in America and up in that area, and I pray for you, be careful, but it's still pretty to see some snow. You know, it is after Thanksgiving, and I think it's the first snow of the season, so that's a very nice time. So maybe winter won't be so harsh, but it is very, very cold Arctic blasts. And I remember living in Chicago, walking to the bus to go to Loyola when I first moved there on the Magnificent Mile, and the wind would be gusting and gusting, and I'm thinking they're saying, oh, I remember my bus stop in Germany when I was about 10 years old waiting, but they had like a glass enclosed type of situation where you could sit. And then within a year or two, Chicago brought that into the city of Chicago. Now when you go, it looks very European in that it has the covered bus stops for you and things like that that they had in Europe. So I, of course, meander. My thoughts are meandering. And yes, Mercury woke up the other day, and Saturn also moved forward. And now Neptune will be stationed direct on the 10th, which is, I believe, Thursday? Wednesday? Next Wednesday? This coming up Wednesday, Neptune was stationed direct. And then the next day, before Mercury, after it's started moving forward, before it shifts into Sagittarius, Mercury will be at 29 degrees opposing the outer planets of Uranus in Taurus. Just moved back into there, retrograde. And also will be trining Pisces Saturn. Saturn is also 29 degrees. It is moving quite quickly back into Aries as it is already at 29 degrees. So Saturn, I believe, will be moving back not until February 13th. But Neptune is also at 29 degrees, and Neptune will be moving back, I believe, December 20th. So I think Pisces, Uranus, and Mercury are at 25 to 29 degrees respectively in those areas. And then Mercury will be shifting into Sagittarius on the 11th, which is next Thursday. And it's going to shift into Sagittarius. So now Mars and Mercury is in Sagittarius. That means that our actions and our thoughts will be meshing, and they will be quick and maybe a little obsessive, because Mercury's thoughts and Mars wants action, and Mars is in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius' ruler right now, Jupiter, is in Cancer, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So during this time, Mars, anyone that is in Sagittarius or Pisces area where Jupiter rules, they will be having a lot of bursts of good energy from Jupiter. But sometimes it can be too much. Like Jupiter could make you eat too much because you're just so happy and giddy like a kid, you know, and that could happen. When you have Jupiter visiting your sign, you can put on some weight. So it's not a bad thing. The water grand trine is still in effect for this week, I believe, coming up, because Venus is moving to that area, and so things are going to start to really support what it is we want to do. And we don't have to move too quickly. Mars might want us to move too quickly, and we don't really want to move too quickly. We want to move slowly And so this is something that we'll have to be wrestling with into next year when all the outer planets are moving direct and we are in the time of the era where air begins. And like I was saying last week, this Gemini full moon is helping us usher in the air energy. So the big deal about these typhoons and everything is that because the Ring of Fire, we talked about this last week and really for the past month or so because of 3i Atlas coming in. So the Ring of Fire has been activated. A bunch of stuff's happening besides the coronal mass ejection coming at us. One of the biggest telltale signs that we are in a change, and Mother Earth herself is going through a change, is that a volcano that has not erupted for 12,000 years in Ethiopia erupted last week. And it is called the Haile Gubi, and it's part of the Urtha Ale range. So, and then the solar flares that are coming this week are like the ones that hit in 1859. And wow, it really lets you understand during these times that we are living on a living, breathing planet that gives us life and sustains us. And without her giving us life, water, food, all these things we need, we wouldn't exist. And so when these times occur where the earth is sick because of all its coral reefs are dying and the oceans are so warm, and now the cold air is beginning to move down from the North Pole this winter, and if that circular rotation of the warm waters from the southern hemisphere up to the northern hemisphere, if that doesn't continue to happen, then the north could freeze and the south could be very hot. So extremes on both sides is what could occur. So we really don't want that to happen, and it seems that a lot of people really don't care. Like, well, we're just gonna be here for 50 more years. Who cares? You know what happens? And I don't understand that logic at all. So that's, I've spoken about this before since I've been here for a year now. That's one of the reasons we moved back to Florida, because we love nature, and Florida has one of the last living reefs down in the Keys, and we really want to protect that. And we can see there's a lot of building in Florida, and a lot of the building in Florida is now uninsured because insurance companies have actually lost money in the past couple of years due to the hurricanes that we had none this year. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that last 100-year storm, I hope, cleared the way for the next 100 years to go not exactly the same, but less violent here, hopefully. So we can make that happen. A lot of people are growing food. A lot of people are doing things. Like I remember when I lived in Germany, in the village where, you know, in a village of maybe 200 people, then be another village. Even though they're very close, they're still their own little village, you know. And they grew their own food next to their house. And I just remember as a kid falling in love with the Bib lettuce in Germany. I was like, oh. So I think that if you can get excited about vegetables and fruit growing in your yard, you know, it'll help Mother Earth a lot. So that's about it for this week. It's going to be a mostly reactive week to the full moon that just went by, because it was such a powerful full moon squaring the north and south node, and it was a grand cross with a supportive grand water trine. And the sun will be shifting out of Scorpio on the 21st. So we are still deep in Scorpio season. So really know that with Mercury and Mars now both in Sagittarius, the light is lifting. We're coming up from the underworld where we've been personally deep diving into our demons and trying to see if we're ready to move forward, ready to release things. Yesterday, the full moon had me very emotional. I didn't read my horoscope right away when I woke up. I was trying to do something different just to see, and wow, I soaked up so much energy that I think I just didn't know how powerful that full moon was yesterday. And I learned a bunch of things because that's what Gemini wants you to do, is shine a light on where you could learn something right now. And I learned that because of the way you show love doesn't mean that that person you're giving that to is receiving it the way you want it to be received. So you have to also pay attention to things that they might want and give that to them, even if it's not what you would like. So that's something I learned yesterday. It seems like a simple thing to think about, right? But the way I grew up, I've learned a lot of things that I didn't know when I was younger, and so in that way, I think life is more exciting in some way if you can look at it as always a learning experience, always meeting new people, always understanding that change is the only constant in our lives is change. So, have a good week. Choose clarity. Take care. And to my spiritual children, thank you for supporting me and being there and talking and sharing. And I really appreciate that. I can't wait to see a bunch of you guys soon. And I love you guys. Mwah. Thank you. My dog just hit the TV.